The road behind me vanished, swallowed by a thick, relentless fog. I'd arrived at my uncle's villa, a place so far from the city it felt like stepping into a forgotten time. Silence was the only resident here, wrapped in a cold wind that carried the ghosts of old memories. My uncle's request had been simple: look after Myra, my younger sister. She'd been ill for weeks, a deep exhaustion the doctors couldn't explain. But the whispers in the nearby village told a different story, one they only shared in hushed, fearful tones. The house was enormous, a labyrinth of lifeless rooms. A strange smell clung to the air-damp earth and burnt wood, like a fire long extinguished but never forgotten. At night, the silence was broken only by the grandfather clock in the hall, its ticking a metronome for my own frantic heartbeat. And then there was Mira. She'd talk in her sleep, her voice a soft, tender murmur, as if she were confiding in someone right beside her. One night, her whisper was clearer than usual. "Hana," she said, her eyes still closed. "Elara wants to play." The name hung in the air, cold and unfamiliar. I leaned closer. "Who's Elara?" I asked gently, my breath catching in my throat. But Mira just offered a faint, secretive smile and drifted back into her silent world. The question lingered, unanswered, echoing in the cavernous quiet of the house. The next day, a restless energy took hold of me. I searched the villa, room by room, desperate for an answer. I moved through dusty hallways and under cobweb-draped chandeliers, finding nothing but the weight of the past. It was until I reached the old guest room at the very end of the corridor that something shifted. Dust motes danced like fairies in the slivers of light piercing the boarded windows. In the corner, a cracked mirror stood like a silent sentinel, and beneath it, tucked away in a small, ornate box, was a photograph. My heart stopped. Two girls, frozen in a moment of pure joy, smiled out at me. One was unmistakably Myra, her bright, innocent grin so familiar it ached, but the other girl, I didn't know her. Her face was a void in my memory. I turned the photo over, and my fingers trembled as I read the faded ink scrawled in the corner. Elara and Myra forever. The name. The same name from Myra's dream. A cold dread, sharp and icy, began to creep up my spine. That night, the whispering started again. But this time, it wasn't coming from Myra's room. It was everywhere. It slithered from the walls, seeped through the floorboards, and seemed to emanate from the warped reflection in that cracked mirror. It was a chorus of faint, indistinct voices, calling a name I couldn't quite make out. Driven by a mix of terror and a desperate need to understand, I followed the sound. It led me up the creaking staircase, past the silent portraits whose eyes seemed to follow my every move, and towards the one place my uncle had forbidden me to go, the attic. The door groaned open, revealing a space trapped in time. Children's toys, covered in a thick shroud of cobwebs, were scattered across the floorboards. A rocking horse stood frozen mid-gallop, its painted eyes wide and staring. And in the center of the room, hanging from a heavy wooden beam, was a rope. It was still tied. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the room, and my blood ran cold. In the far corner, a figure stood motionless. A young girl with long, dark hair that obscured her face. Her eyes were hollow voids, but her smile was wide, unnervingly wide. "Elara?" I whispered, the name a fragile breath in the suffocating air. A figure tilted its head, a slow, unnatural movement. A voice, not of a child, but something ancient and filled with rage, hissed from the shadows. "You let me die." The word struck me like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, my hands flying to my mouth. No, I didn't know what I was saying. I wasn't there, I couldn't have been. But before I could finish the thought, before I could scream, the girl lunged forward, her hollow eyes swallowing the last of the light, and then silence. A profound, absolute silence that was deeper and more terrifying than any sound. I awoke to the feeling of being shaken. My eyes fluttered open to the pale morning light streaming through the window. My uncle was leaning over me, his face etched with a concern that seemed wrong, too calm. The house was quiet again. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by an eerie stillness. But something was missing. Myra, I sat bolt upright. Myra! I scrambled to my feet and ran from the room, my voice echoing through the empty halls. Myra, where are you? I searched every room, my calls growing more frantic, more desperate, but she was gone. All I found were the old family photos lining the walls. And as my gaze swept over them, a scream caught in my throat. They were different, changed. Every single one of them now showed 3 girls. There was Myra, there was me. And standing between us, her hand on my shoulder, was Elara. We were all smiling, a happy, perfect family. Tears streamed down my face as I stumbled back, my mind reeling, trying to piece together a reality that was fracturing before my eyes. I ran to the mirror in the hall, the gilded one my grandmother loved, needing to see my own face, to ground myself. But the reflection that stared back wasn't just mine. My uncle's voice came from behind me, soft and filled with an unbearable sadness. Hana, you were never meant to come back here. Elara and Myra died in that fire years ago. My hands, the hands I saw in the mirror, began to tremble. My reflection, no, asterisk Elara's asterisk reflection, smiled. And from the cold glass, a whisper reached only my ears. Now it's your turn to remember.